Hey y'all, it's Melanie Beran with Wyatt Properties, and today we are going to talk about 6 ways to write an offer that gets accepted. Now, like I said, we're going to talk about 6 ways that you can make a strong offer on a home, because this is definitely a seller's market. But using these every single time may still mean that your offer doesn't get accepted, and it's pretty common right now for buyers to submit multiple offers on different homes before they get accepted and are in a contract with a seller to purchase a home. So stick around for all 6, but first make sure that you go ahead and subscribe if home buying content and things like that are going to be helpful to you on your home buying journey. Now, obviously I'm here in Houston, but really across the country, in most places, it is a strong seller's market. That means the sellers have the upper hand. There are fewer homes on the market than there are buyers. There are way more buyers than there are homes for sale, especially if you're in that first-time home buyer range, right? Under $200,000, under $225,000. So it's really important to look at what you're offering, not just the price, but look at what you're offering and see what you can do to make sure that you and the seller are in a win-win situation. So, tip number 1 for writing a strong offer in this 2021 seller's market is to offer a free lease back. A lot of times, sellers are needing to purchase a home and sell their home at the same time. It can be really stressful, and so they're trying to move out and move into their new home, or maybe their new home isn't closed on yet, so they're looking at a week or 2 weeks of trying to live with family or in an apartment, and what do you do with all your stuff, all that kind of thing. So offering a free lease back when you're writing an offer can be a really strong incentive for a seller to select your offer over someone else's. Even if someone else's offer is a little bit higher, if you're making their life easier, that could be worth more than money to them. A lot of times when I'm working with buyers, I'll go ahead and introduce myself to the listing agent ahead of time and ask, hey, is your seller looking for a lease back? Is this something they need or want? Greasing those wheels before you even have a showing or make an offer can really make a difference. That's one of the reasons that it's important to work with a buyer's agent when you're buying a home. We work on more transactions in a year than you may deal with in your whole life. So we know the do's, the don'ts, and how to make for a smooth transaction, or as smooth a transaction as possible. Tip number 2 is probably what a lot of people think about. Offer over list price. That's becoming really common right here in the Houston area, and sometimes the seller and the listing agent will list a home just below market value to make and create a bidding war to get those bids up as high as possible in a multiple offer situation. So, offering above list price can be one strategy that you can employ. On the flip side of that, that means that one of the strategies you need to have as a buyer may be shopping 10, 15, 20,000 below your pre-approval amount so that you have room to offer up. If you shop at the very, very tip top of your range, you may not have the leverage to offer up and offer over list price. Now, don't forget that the home still will go through the appraisal process. Appraisers are adjusting to this very competitive market, but you need to be prepared for working through the appraisal process with me, with the seller and the listing agent, if you offer above and the home doesn't make appraisal. Speaking of appraisal, let's go ahead and talk about tip number 3 for writing a strong offer. In Texas, we have what is called an addendum. That is a right to terminate on appraisal. Basically what that means is if you offer $400,000 on a house and you have an appraisal that comes back at $385,000, if you cannot get the sellers to negotiate down to that $385,000, you have the right, if you have a signed and accepted addendum that says that you have the right to terminate based on the appraisal value if the home doesn't make, your list or your offer price. What's happening more and more and becoming a little more common is buyers not using that addendum, and instead, if they have a home that they are offered and were accepted at $400,000 and the appraisal comes back at $385,000, as a realtor, I can help kind of fight that appraisal and get that appraisal up, work with the appraiser and show them comps in the neighborhood and in the area that push that price higher. But another option is not using that addendum at all and waiving your right to terminate on appraisal. So what that means is if you are a buyer and you offer at $400,000 and it comes back at $385,000, that you as the buyer will make up that $15,000 difference. Now, this isn't an option for everyone. You may not have an extra $15,000 laying around, but if you do, this is a really great way to make your offer as strong as possible. So we have 6 tips so far. The first tip is to offer a free leaseback. The second tip is what most people think of in offering over list price. The third tip is to waive your right to terminate on appraisal, which basically means if you offer $10,000 over list price and the home doesn't appraise for your offer, that you as the buyer will come up with the cash difference. And tip number 4 is to offer as fast a closing as possible. This is somewhat dependent and really mostly dependent on your lender. So it's really important that you, your real estate agent, and your lender are all on the same page on what your lender is most likely able to deliver. However, let's use a situation I had last year. I had a buyer who was working through the end of an apartment lease at the same time that she was looking for a home, and we ended up pushing her closing out about 50 days. That is not going to be typical in this seller's market. Sellers want to close typically as fast as possible. Even if they have a lease back later, they still want the deal to be done and closed so that they have access to those funds and they are no longer the owner of that home. So talk with your lender. Have your realtor talk with your lender, talk about what kind of loan you have, whether it's conventional, FHA, what their closing timeline is like, and make sure that you work with your lender to have all possible documentation into them ahead of time so that underwriting process can go through as quickly as possible. Tip number 5, and this is really important in a seller's market, don't ask for closing costs. Several years ago, when it was a stronger buyer's market, you could say, hey, we're going to offer this, but we're also going to ask for $3,000 in seller contributions to closing costs. If you're not sure what closing costs are, go ahead and check out this video, how much cash you need to close, because that goes over down payment and closing costs. But in a nutshell, closing costs are the fees that are associated with buying a home. The fees associated with getting a loan, prepaying some taxes or homeowner's insurance, things like that. Those can easily be $3,000, $5,000, $7,000 on top of your down payment. So in a stronger buyer's market where sellers are needing to help the buyers out a little bit, it might be common to ask for closing costs. Right now is not that time. Most sellers are not going to assist with closing because they're getting 10, 15, sometimes 20 or more offers on a home. So they're not going to choose one that's going to basically net them less money. In this seller's market, we are recommending that buyers typically do not ask for sellers to contribute to closing costs. And then number 6, perhaps the most important tip, is to submit that offer as soon as possible. When homes are hitting the market, you want to be in there on the first day. If you can't get in there on the first day, there's work and there's T-ball and there's all of these things. I'm happy as a buyer's agent to go in there and give you a video tour and FaceTime so that you can see this home on the first or second day, because you want to be one of the first offers that hits the table. When a seller gets that first offer, it often starts kind of a stopwatch for them, and they don't want to lose out on offers, and it just kind of builds that anticipation and that readiness to make a decision and sell their home. So you want to be one of the first offers on the table. That means you need to be pre-approved with a lender. I can recommend people for that. That means that you need to know what you want and what you need and know the difference between the two of those things, so that when you see a home, even when you preview it with the pictures online, you can say, hey, this doesn't have need 2, 3, and 4, so we're not even going to look at this home. So that you're really focusing on the homes that do have what you need, have most of what you want, and you can make a strong, solid offer. Getting those offers in ASAP, getting those showings in ASAP is going to be a really strong tool in the toolbox to help you win in a multiple offer situation. So those are the 6 tips. I hope this was helpful. If you need more information, make sure that you go ahead and watch this video, 5 simple steps on how to buy a house. And I hope something really great happens to you today.